Chapter 17. Venrue's music.
Venrue examined the settings on the Votron. They were a little different to hers. This was a more recent model, but not that different that she couldn't find a way around it. She considered what to play and thought about the first time she'd seen Zach in the walkway outside the Ockerdens bar, how she'd seen him follow her inside, and how she'd wanted to appeal to him with her music. Venrue was ready to play. She looked up over the Votron into the expectant gaze of the audience and the Tranorian staff. Glancing at her three friends, she began. The swell of melody and counter-melody that had become so familiar to Zach filled the establishment with her rendition of a currently popular piece. At the side of the stage, the resident musician watched and listened with amazement. Tranorian waiters gathered at the back of the room and nodded their approval. Those that were busy waiting on tables stopped to listen. Had they not been impressed with this doll-like girl that could speak their language, they certainly were now. Even the audience, conservative and suppressed as they were moved. It showed on their faces, as it did with the resident musician, and Venrue was pleased. None of this escaped Zentran. He noted how Venrue received the cumulative admiration and invested it back into the magic of her performance. The audience received a higher level of splendor from her music than any of them had ever experienced. But there was more. An insidious facet presented itself. Undercover lookalikes on the opposite side of the dance floor became conspicuous by the uneasiness with the heightened level of aesthetics that was being introduced to them. Zentran smiled. Perhaps one could convert evil by lifting it into the realm of beauty. Perhaps. Lookalikes were machines, and yet somehow the music was getting to them. How come? Was the high level of aesthetic content traveling through the spiritual realm, confusing their detection senses? There was something about these lookalikes that he still could not figure out. Zentran, Zach and Fora looked at each other suddenly. They had all sensed it. There was a stirring in the spiritual thought field. The lookalikes sensed it as well. Using zero force, Zentran monitored it and honed in on a man on the lower level. He had inadvertently used mental energy to move one of the large waiters out of the way, who was obscuring his view of Venrue. The lookalikes were not fast enough to ascertain the source before it was gone. However, the waiter, taken by surprise at being moved, looked around in confusion and met the eyes of the perpetrator. Realizing his oversight, the man succumbed to a lookalike's icy stare. Fear did the rest. He resisted arrest, but was no match for their combined energy. Venrue sensed something amiss, even though the incident was masked by her performance. The applause, conservative though it was, as she finished the first piece, contributed to making less of lookalike activity and the ensuing arrest. The cover-up was short-lived. In desperation, the man being arrested used his energy to bring down a large light fitting. It landed heavily onto one of the humanoids, causing visible damage. The ploy did little to help his cause, as the remaining lookalikes now overtly held him fast. Woman screamed in the confusion. It became obvious that the damaged lookalike was not human. Moving mechanical parts of its arm and shoulder were clearly visible, beneath a fractured synthetic skin. People close to panic clambered away from the commotion. Venrue hurriedly left the stage to rejoin her friends.
What's going on?
She asked anxiously. Zack and Zentran monitored the activity outside through the transparent wall above water level. 3 lookalikes were escorting the arrested man with considerable physical force across the lake walkway. Fora took the initiative to fill Venrue in.
Those 3 council agents are actually android machines, as you can see from the damaged one, and they're arresting that man.
What did he do?
They detected him using mental force.
They seem to take that very seriously.
The council considers such individuals dangerous. They'll deprogram him so that he no longer has the ability and is not a threat to them. Sometimes these people disappear altogether.
There was regret in Fora's voice.
That's terrible.
Venrue watched the activity outside.
This has something to do with my performance.
Lack of response served as confirmation. Zentran turned to Zack.
We're not going to let this happen, are we?
Zack's face lit up like a mischievous child's.
Definitely not.
Come, girls, it's time to leave the party. Zack and I have something to attend to.
Knowing what the men had in mind sent a shiver through Fora. She could help if needed. Her ability was probably greater than they suspected. Its extent remained untested. Even in the dark zone, fear had kept her from using it fully. The moving walkway was crowded with people leaving the club as the 4 made their way across the lake and through the tropical jungle. The 3 lookalikes and their prisoner had already reached the aircar pad. Zentran and Zack walked briskly, forcing their way through the crowd. Fora stayed back with a mystified Venrue.
What are Zack and Zentran up to?
Men's stuff.
Fora disposed of it with a shrug, although she was more concerned than Venrue. She had a fair idea of what they were about to do. If it went badly, she would have to weigh in as well. Striding ahead, Zentran and Zack left their bodies to determine the activity in the aircar pad beyond. A lookalike inside the aircar was getting ready for ascent. The other 2 pushed the prisoner inside.
You take the one at the back.
Zentran's communication needed no encouragement. The lookalikes and their prisoner also picked up the communication and turned around in surprise. They saw nothing. Zentran and Zack's physical forms were still hurrying towards the airpad. The girls and the crowd were even further back. There was no love lost between Zack's unseen beingness and the lookalike as he wrenched it backwards with more force than was required. Shock gripped the lookalike as Zack's power sent it crashing into a perimeter wall. Amazement appeared on the prisoner's face. Zentran, with more finesse, sent it uncompromisingly to where the other lay crumpled on the ground. He felt pity for it, even though he knew it would be in microwave communication with their base. Undoubtedly, reinforcements would be dispatched. He didn't concern himself with Zack's bewilderment at his soft handling of the enemy. The lookalike writhing on the ground next to its burnt-out partner did not know how to succumb, even though it realized it was no match for the force that held it. Zentran and Zack now came to view as they arrived physically at the aircar pad. Zentran could sense the lookalike's agony as its circuitry forced it to comply with a task it could not perform. It had no provision for failure or overload protection. Zentran melted its central processing unit, rendering it useless next to the one Zack had destroyed. The third look-alike left the controls of the air car to retrieve the arrested man. Although the prisoner was more powerful than the average man, the remaining look-alike held him easily until Zentran intervened.
Make a run for it.
Urged Zentran as he undid the look-alike's hold. The released man located Zentran and Zack standing over the two burnt-out humanoids. Nodding a thank you, he disappeared through an aircar pad exit. Fora, Venrue, and other people leaving the club arrived at the aircar pad. Assessing the situation, Fora's apprehension subsided. Her help was not even required. She smiled at Venrue.
Zack and Zentran have freed the man.
The third look-alike gave chase. It had to reapprehend the man at any cost. But before it had taken 2 steps, Zack hit it with the force of a demolition hammer. Confused people stood motionless. Fora rushed to Zentran and fell into his arms. Venrue, unsure of what was happening, linked her arm into Zack's as they walked to the air car. In the air car, everyone appeared in good spirits, except Venrue. She knew she was missing something. Taking the air car up, Zentran glanced down at reinforcements arriving at the air car pad to recapture the escapee. More were arriving as they sped away from the Morning Sun Club and the Morning Zone.
Do you think they'll find him?
Inquired Fora.
If he keeps his head and lies low, he should be okay. Hopefully they didn't transmit any pictures of him back to their headquarters.
Venrue touched Zack's arm.
What happened back there, Zack?
You don't want to know, my love, but let me tell you, you played great.